Welcome to A Sip with Whiskey and Sweet Tea, the short show where we play games and sip on topics.
Sip on this, YouTube.
In the spirit of our recent analysis of the horror classic 28 Days Later, today's topic is the zombie virus. Are there any diseases out there that could lead to a zombie pandemic? Please be advised, zombies are scary.
Well, hi there. So, what's the first thing you think of with all this virus going around? For me, it's zombies. And earlier, we were talking about a specific movie, but I was wondering where all this, this zombie stuff comes from.
Right, yeah.
Is there any sort of virus that could actually cause a zombie apocalypse? And where does, the myth of the zombie come from? So I did a little bit of armchair research using the Googles, using the Webernets. And I kind of picked up some things. So movie fans like us, and maybe like you out there, probably know that zombie movies have existed a lot longer than George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead. They actually used to be kind of a little bit of a problematic kind of genre back in the day. They're still good. We saw I Walked with a Zombie at one point. That's a really good one. White Zombie's a really good one. And they kind of take some of the problematic...
Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island is a good one. Let's just be fair. That was the first horror movie a lot of us saw, and nowadays it's fine, but back then we were all terrified. And if you weren't, you're lying.
This is true. It's also back when straight-to-video Scooby-Doo movies meant something. Now it's like the cheap... Anyway, so back in the day, the Haitian Zombie was a sort of horror trope before, it was reformed into what we understand about zombies now. And it was much more based on the sort of voodoo occult mysticism that we misunderstood from the time. So apparently some people have actually researched the phenomenon in Haiti and kind of come on some explanations for things. And zombies do sort of exist. Not exactly, but sort of.
Okay.
So in voodoo practice, the Bakar is the priest, and they have a zombie powder they call Coupe Poudre. It's... I can't pronounce things. Coupe Poudre. And this powder is a mix of a bunch of things. There's human remains. There's animal parts.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah. And one of the key ingredients is actually from the liver of the pufferfish. The parts that, that's got the...
Does it have mercury in it?
Tetrodotoxin.
Or this toxin.
Yeah, and that is what will kill you, and it's a neurotoxin, so it paralyzes your body. So this was really what people researching the whole zombie phenomenon in Haiti were able to say, this is probably what people were succumbing to. That's the reality of that whole side of the zombie myth, and that's what we took and made into the movies that were made back in the day when things were a lot crazier in the movie world. But I wanted to go a little deeper because that just takes the Haitian zombie. So now I was curious what illnesses might or might not create a zombie apocalypse. So I found a couple of good ones. We've got the African sleeping sickness. That's the street name, as they call it.
The street name. Okay.
It's actually called African trypanosomiasis.
This is really just
African trypanosomiasis.
This is really just a segment where Whiskey tries to pronounce a bunch of words.
Pretty much. Of course, all of this stuff comes from places that have names I can't read. But so this comes from a local fly in rural Africa. And the symptoms are fever, headaches, joint pains, behavioral changes. This is the key thing with the zombie. And poor coordination. So this is where you get the hobbling around sort of thing. Now, the scary part is it is fatal. It will kill you if you get this. The good news is it's treated with medication.
Oh, good. Okay.
Not going to cause it. So strike one or strike all three for African sleeping sickness. It's not going to cause a zombie apocalypse. But what about Kuro Disease, T? What do you think about Kuro disease?
I want to say yes, it will definitely cause a zombie apocalypse.
Well, we'll just have to see about that. Buckle your seatbelts, kids. This one's a little crazier than the last one. This one is not from Africa. It's from Papua New Guinea.
Okay.
And the Foray people, actually, they have a spiritual practice where they eat the brains of deceased people because they believe that it will help ferry them to the afterlife. The downside to eating the brains of deceased people is that it actually causes some problems. It will create abnormally formed prion proteins, and this will lead to tremors, coordination loss, and neurodegeneration.
Yeah, I was gonna say there has, because like, from what I've read about cannibalism,
stay away from the brain. It's so fun fact, and this is outside of my research, but brain was like a common thing to get at butcher shops as not far back as the 1950s. So you could get like cow brain and stuff like that back. I found this out. I was watching, I think it was a Twilight Zone episode, and the woman picked up brain. But so there's a reason we don't do it anymore, and it's because you can get some funky stuff from eating brains. It's not necessarily, and especially human brains. Like there's probably a reason why maybe that's even tied to the whole zombie myth. For all we know, maybe someone read about Kuro disease and wrote some fiction or something. But anyway, eating human brains is bad for you, as it turns out. It leads to all this stuff. So as it goes on, more symptoms. It has a lack of muscle control, diasphoria, which is pretty much just more neurodegeneration. Emotional instability, which once again we get the potential for like lashing out, sort of like a zombie.
My entire generation has that.
Ooh, this is the creepy one. Sporadic laughter. So
I think if
you have Kuro disease, you might just start laughing for no reason. And difficulty swallowing, which is interesting because that's actually something you get when you have rabies.
And tonsillitis too.
Well, rabies, I don't know, has more in common with like a zombie virus.
That's true. That is true. Anybody who's ever seen Cujo would know that.
So the bad news with Kuro disease it is incurable. There is no medication. If you have it, you are not gonna do very well. But it's rare, because you have to eat human brain.
Oh, good. Okay. So as long as we don't eat human brain, we should be safe from this.
But as a lot of fans of zombie fiction know, eating brains is a common thing. So it does make you wonder if maybe that came from this. Will it cause a global pandemic of brain-eating zombies? No.
Yeah, because from what you said, it's not contagious.
It's not, at least as far as we know. Fans of video game series like The Last of Us will know it as Cordyceps. It's a fungus. This one is pretty spooky. I remember when that game came out, it was a little disturbing because I'd never heard of this fungus. If you've watched some nature documentaries, you might have heard of it as well. Basically, nature, like people who study insects or fungus, or what they call it, the zombie ant fungi. What it essentially does is it infects insects, usually ants, and it tells them to do things to spread the spores around. Either they'll climb up to a branch and just kind of sit there and let the spores like go off of them, or they'll get eaten by another insect that'll get infected. If you search Cordyceps and tarantula, it is pure nightmare fuel. You see like just fungus growing out of this thing.
Okay.
So
nice visual. I don't have to eat later.
So apparently, according to what I was reading, scientists do think it is potential. Like, so in The Last of Us, this fungus has evolved to the point where it infects humans the same way it infects insects, which sounds pretty far-fetched, but according to what I did read, scientists haven't ruled it out, which is the spooky part. So the idea that it could actually get to the point where it's infecting people the same way it infects insects, it's possible. It hasn't happened. It's not at that stage at this point, but apparently that is not just utter fiction, which is pretty scary. So far, leading the charge for real zombie viruses, Cordyceps, or I'll try and say it, everybody, but I'm going to screw it up.
That's okay.
Ophiocordyceps unilateralis. Ophiocordyceps unilateralis.
Let's just call it Cordyceps.
It's the catchier one. So I do have one thing. Although Cordyceps seems to be the leader in all of this, I do have one final virus.
Okay.
The giant virus.
Okay, is that referred to it makes people tall, or is it just
no? So
big?
this one's pretty nuts. So they had some scientists up in Siberia were able to unearth this virus. And the reason it's called a virus or a giant virus is not because it makes you a giant, although that'd be pretty cool. You could infect me with that, I'd play for a basketball team or something, right? But so the reason it's called that is it's so big that you can actually easily see it under a microscope.
Okay.
This is like a dinosaur virus.
So the actual virus itself is just large, even by virus standpoint.
Yeah, it's huge. Okay. And there's more to it than that. So the one that they found in Siberia, they called the Pithovirus siberium, so giant virus from Siberia. It's 30,000 years old, and it was found in the permafrost in 2014. So the spooky thing about this virus, and probably maybe even the reason it's so big, is that it contains over 500 genes. It's a DNA virus, so it's actually very similar to HIV. The difference is, whereas a giant virus has 500 genes, the HIV virus only has 12.
That's scary.
Yeah. So what that means is essentially it's extremely dangerous because it can stick around for a long time. Based on what we know about like HIV and all that, it's probably going to be kind of hard to find a way of eliminating it. The good news is those monster scientists did reanimate this virus.
How fun.
But it only infected amoebas. So they did test it on animals and stuff. Did not infect the animals. We are safe. But this is only one of several giant viruses that are out there. There could be some deep under the ocean. There could be some more in the permafrost that does affect humans. We don't know. And who knows, with environmental things, that permafrost could be melting. So, although Cordyceps, it's possible for a big zombie outbreak, probably unlikely unless the fungus mutates, but we don't really know that much about all the different giant viruses out there because they're thousands, if not possibly millions of years old, so we don't even know if this is as giant as they could get.
I think then we should just leave them in the permafrost. Let's just build a Walmart and get over that, okay?
What's that quote from Jurassic Park? You thought that you could control it, so
If this was a movie, I would put as its tagline, "Some things should stay buried," literally, or stay frozen.
But that's what I've got. So we're safe for another day. And if you're worried about coronavirus, at least there are worse things out there that you could suffer from. I certainly hope I never come down with Kuro Disease. That sounds like a walking nightmare, and hopefully...
Well, I mean, isn't that the one where you have to eat a brain to get?
Well, I was just planning on having a really crazy Halloween party this year.
So everybody avoid Whiskey's house this Halloween.
Or don't.
But if you do, prepare to be cut down in a heartbeat.
What's your favorite virus? Please comment.
Please don't comment on that.
Favorite virus, comment wins.
There's that podcast, My Favorite Killer, My Favorite Serial Killer. This comment section will now just be My Favorite Virus Is.
Top comment wins a microscope slide with a giant virus.
Disclaimer, we don't have that and we're not giving it to you. Hope you enjoyed this sip from Whiskey and Sweet Tea, and we'll catch you in the next one. A Sip with Whiskey and Sweet Tea is a production of La Prince Laboratories. It is edited and produced by Alejandro Castillo, with original artwork by Asa Esparza. Follow us on Twitter at Reels on the Rocks, and tweet at us with any movies or TV shows you'd like us to discuss in the future.